morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Peter Panagore. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
I knew I was going to have fun today when I saw that I get to work with you today. So I knew it would be fun because we might as well make this all fun, right?
Oh, I think so. So just to cue in the audience, I did a lot. I was on television for a long time, and I learned about what you need to go on camera and not, well, to look your best. So I'm coming out right now. I've been using makeup on camera for 20 years. I use less now. I don't put on a foundation that I used to put on for television because I don't really need it, but I do powder. And I
know I was watching you like I should be taking notes. Like, too bad we're not recording right now. So you should teach us. You should teach us. I mean, what we don't know. I mean, I try, but I don't wear much makeup.
Yeah. What do you think? Like a workshop?
Sure. How to communicate at your best. It's all part of communication.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely it is. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, so I am always excited to talk to Peter because his mystical view of life really expands my horizons. And I am always in awe of all of his book knowledge as well as the way he makes it useful, because so much of the esoteric work is hard to implement. I mean, and a lot of experiences, like you've had near-death experiences, I've had spiritually transformative experiences. It's very hard to articulate because you feel it, and the words just don't quite do it. But you do it. I don't know how you do it. So, do you want to start there?
Let's start there. And may I mention one of my great radio heroes of all time, Garrison Keillor, who used to have a bit on Prairie Home Companion about English majors. I was an English major, and that's at the root of a lot of what I do, is having been an English major and learning about the tool set that's behind that informs writing and reading, and anthropology. So the study of symbols and myths, those things. I wasn't an anthropology major, but I took some classes. And then I went to divinity school. And in divinity school, I'm a creative thinker. I learned analytics and systematics. I learned how to approach things and gather information from lots of different sources, synthesize them and simplify them. And both of those things are all about writing. It's all about language.
Right.
So the tool set is in existence. I happened to, be an English major when I died. And what I learned was is that every mystic in the world, first I should say every mystic in the world is different from every other mystic in the world. That's the first thing. The second thing is that metaphor, symbol, simile, and to an extent allegory, these are the tools of the mystical mind because of this guy, not because of this guy, okay, but this guy explained it in a way that I could understand it. His name was Pseudo-Dionysius, and he was in the 6th century, and he's a Western mystic, and he developed this thing called negative theology, which you're never taught in church. It's called negative theology because what it states is that anything you say about the divine is wrong, because you can't use, no one human can use a word to define the indefinable. And so he makes this negative thing. And one of the things he talks about is, if I am good, then God cannot be good, or the source cannot be good, or light cannot be good, because you can't use this word good with a lowercase g, that is supported by all these other words that define the concept. And these two things, the support of the individual word and the concept, they only exist in the human mind. And the divine, when I died, I went into nothingness. I went to the place of no thing, nothing. This pseudo-Dionysian idea of negative theology mirrors what happened to me. So the starting place is words don't match the divine source. So the only tools available are metaphor, symbol, simile, and to a certain extent, allegory. Is
Wow.
that too much?
That was great. Okay, so allegory still is an approximation of, well, telling a story.
Well, can I give an example?
Okay, yeah, please.
A great allegory is Chaucer's. Oh my God! And now I just blinked.
Beowulf.
Not Beowulf. Oh my God! I've just blinked on the title. As soon as I thought it left.
Okay, well, we can talk about something else. It'll be back.
Okay, you go ahead. Sorry. Oh, almost had it. It'll come to me.
So okay. I want everyone to know in the audience how generous this man is. He's had 2 near-death experiences. He does work at, well, he has been I think it's a Congregationalist, right?
Yeah, a branch of that for sure.
Okay. And now you have all these programs where you help people, and you're religious. You're you schedule yourself on a regular basis, which I know what that is, because that's what I've been doing for 3.5 years, where twice a week I'm on
Right.
doing this. So I know what that commitment is. Not everyone may know what that is, but I do. So
Thank you.
tell us, yeah, thank you for what you do, because you have, and we'll show your website in a little bit so we can invite people to join us with that. But where did you get the idea to do that? I mean, you had 2 near-death experiences. You've written 2 books. They're both fantastic. You've been on a lot of shows. You've been on TV. Besides your job on TV, which we could talk about, but you've been on TV. So you've been out there saying, "Hey guys, there's no shame, there's no blame. You don't have to wait till you die to be in love with yourself and God." I mean, the mystical experience. You're like out there telling people, enjoy it. Right?
Yeah, because it leads to reality with a capital R. And if you've had a mystical experience of some kind, which many people have, it's common. If you've had a mystical experience of any kind that has left an after effect with you, that after effect that you carry with you, this wisdom, that is your window back to source. And so you can utilize this thing. And as you utilize it, as you use those tools that are left behind, the greater your capacity grows to experience it. So it keeps growing as long as you feed it yourself. And that's what happens in this process. It's hungry for your false self, and that's what gets consumed. It's a, yeah, it, and so I should tell your audience, Kathy, that after my first near-death experience, I was lost. Jeez, I thought I dealt with all the trauma, but I guess not. Anyway, so I was lost. And I went hunting for a way to think about what happened to me. And I realized, I was raised in New England, not far from Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, where I would see these homes, they're not far from my house. And I read The Transcendentalist as an English major. And when I read actually, I think I first read them in high school. I read them in high school first, and then I studied them in my department. And I found inside of them this truth that left me knowing that there were people in the history of the world who understood this. So I was a mystic before I died. And that led me to the idea that there was literature written by mystical experiencers of high quality, geniuses, left behind in the public record to examine, to find out what they knew and how they lived their lives and how they cultivated this divine self. And all of that research um, comes into practice, literally into practice. That's what they say. That's what they all say. Practice, practice, practice. Um, you can pick your technique, but there's a stripping of self. The more one practices, the larger the space inside oneself becomes, the more light that comes in. And it's not like this, it's not like maybe this is the result in meditation of many forms, chopping into the flow, meditating, all these different, and all the different permutations of those things, movement, breath, focus, they all grow the spirit naturally. They just do that. So there's this effort, non-effort that happens with it. The effort, of course, is to practice, but the non-effort is the growth of it by itself. It's this super amazing energy that is available to every single person because of the innate goodness inside of every single human being, good and bad.
Mhm.
Okay, and everything in between. There's no existence without this inside it. And because it's inside us, and of course there's DNA, and there's psychopaths and narcissists, and there's stuff that's troubled the human form. But even inside those people, at the very core of their being, is the divine self, which is everywhere. So if you have the capacity that you don't so much stand in your way as like a psychopath of some kind, um, you can find this inside yourself. And maybe psychopaths can too. I'm not one, so I've never practiced. That just seems so self-absorbed.
Well, the reason I asked about this is that I think you came back after 2 near-death experiences, and I'm more familiar with the first one because I've heard that story where you were young, you're 20 years old or about when you froze to death, and you came back um, after experiencing the biggest love, the biggest experience you can fathom, and still was able to go to divinity school and function, but no, not
Well, functioning was very difficult.
was
I,
wasn't.
yeah, but it was so I functioned out of my desperation.
Oh, okay.
That's really how uh, anything ordinary and mundane in my life was very difficult to do. So I decided that my only chance for reintegration, because this is in the 80s, I didn't know that I'd had a near-death experience. I mean, I knew it happened to me, but I didn't have a name for it,
Right.
and I didn't know anybody like me. So I went to divinity school to study the mystics because my only motivation in the freaking world was this one thing. I could not do anything other than this one thing. This one thing, when I came back that first time, totally, well, I was going to say totally consumed me, but that's not true because I've spent the rest of my life allowing myself to be consumed, but it completely dominated me for sure. It was like this, I spent those first few years, I was in the river of the flow, but I was trying to swim upstream, and boulders and slush and branches and trees that kept knocking me around. And I decided to start swimming across the river. So I go to divinity school. That's kind of the swimming. Now I'm not now right. So I'm like, okay, I'll make some adjustment here, and I focus in on trying to learn about the history and the language of it, and eventually through the practice of meditation and Kriya Yoga in combination, centering prayer practice, I found myself going further and further downstream, and then something happened where I just decided to swim with the flow. And once I started swimming with the flow, self-sacrifice became easier because my biggest fear was being consumed. I was consumed when I was dead, but my choice when I came back was to have a little bit of self. I mean, I made the opposite choice. I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't choose the fullness in that was offered to me. I was like, no, I'm good. I'll take a little bit of I'll take a little bit. And so I've spent my entire life trying to learn to surrender. That's and the reason why I do that is because innately, like that's the thing it's telling me to do, but also because everybody who went before me, whose book was left behind in many different religious cultures, mystical books that were left behind that had the value of being passed down generation to generation, um, proving to me, that was the proof to me of their worthiness of their wisdom, because the books kept getting passed down, which is why I studied ancient texts and not modern texts, because I wanted something that a community had gathered around and understood. And in this, I toss in my favorite poet. Rumi is in this category, but so are the teachings of Jesus and Lao Tzu and others. I could list Pantagali. There's a long list, and in them, I guess the distillation of my studies is pretty singular, and that is that there is a singular, and that the way back home is by making oneself singular. And by making oneself singular is this practice of whatever meditative prayer, life, flow, walking, whatever you're doing, to aim yourself at the one thing. And there's lots of things we could aim ourselves at, spiritually speaking, and all of them ultimately lead back to the one thing, because all of them are made of the one thing. Or you could aim a little bit for a shortcut and cut out the middle person and the intermediary and aim for the one thing, and sort of root yourself in yourself sooner than you might. That was their advice.
Well,
Sorry.
if that's possible, that's the thing, is that the magnitude of the experience is so grand that first, this is from a spiritually transformative experience, not from near death, but I think it's similar, although I didn't have to go to the hospital or anything. Thank goodness. But the disassociation with the matrix or the reality as it is, and not playing that game, is one thing. But it's also, Peter, every morning I wake up, I see that event again. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
it happened 18 years ago. And part of the reason I got so involved, and I am still involved with ions, is you guys seem to have words for what I have never had words for, but I am actively engaged in that bigger self, well, God, but wanting to hold more light into this vessel, wanting to bring more of that into this space. And so the words, when I first heard you speak and you were quoting all of these ancient mystics, it was like, oh, good, I found somebody who can content curate for me. And
Yeah, guys, that's it. You're
I don't
right.
have to read 100 books. Thank you.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
it's really true. I mean, because I still don't have words. I still work from my feelings, not from my intellect a lot of the times, but I know I'm being brought people that have the words, or can put the emotion, the feeling into the words and express it. That's what you do.
Well, that's what well, funny you say that, because that's what Rumi does for me. Rumi often speaks for me, and there are lots of other people who often speak for me. And
Well,
so there's
does
a community of that. I'm like that's a community.
Yeah. Well, Rumi, though, there's longing. And I don't really feel like and I think when I've interviewed you before, we've talked about this, that a lot of people that have near death experiences have a longing for that and not this, right? You said you had an adjustment period after, right? So, and Rumi is all about longing. It's about the divine love affair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Well, I had to pause um, because really, truly, that's what this was supposed to be.
Still can be.
That okay, so tell us how I got chills. Tell us how it can be. Because we're seeing a world in total change right now. People are not the people that are not ready for change are in huge fear. A lot of chaos, a lot of change, a lot of fear because they're holding on to what was because they haven't broken out of that that's just one way to be expressing yourself in this reality.
So I would start with death and the great freedom that comes from knowing that it all ends and all is well, was well, and will be well. So it kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off, takes a lot of the fear away. And so what I found that removes my fear is again driving myself inside myself toward the singular oneness. This is Eckhart Tolle talks about this in being in the now. This is a portion. This is the being in the now, which is where the timelessness is found. And you can be like the person who tries to fix all the things out here. Say your life gets super complicated, and you've got to keep. You know how that is. Everybody's life is super complicated, or potentially so. We're always moving all this stuff, these moving parts around, and we're always working out here. This this practice of single-mindedness makes us only have to move one thing. And when that one thing is moved and the person enters into the now, that's through a practice of meditation. This is and there are other ways. It's not the only way. That's just the way that I have some control over. Other ways I don't have much control over. But this self-emptying that by layer allows more heaven present. You talked about heaven here now, and the way to bring heaven here now is to get self out of the way. And that happens in the regular practice of a meditative life. I practice centering prayer. It works for me. I throw in Kriya yoga. That works for me. Whatever your thing is, that as long as it eliminates yourself in the process, you can be you could be knitting. You could be knitting and being in the needles and in the thread and not thinking. You're just like in the presence of the divine and the doing. So anywhere that focuses mind and breath together brings you into the now. So that's where the divine is. And I'm not worried about the people outside. Yeah, I am worried about the people outside, like the people who are living in so much fear that there are wars and threats of wars and worse. And so I can't fix any of them. That's way too big a problem for me. But I can bring more heaven inside myself. And the more heaven I bring inside myself, the more I impact the world around me. The more I impact the world around me, this little piece of earth becomes heaven, reflective of heaven in some way. So how do you do this yourself? Well, there's a bunch of ways. Meditative life, aiming at the singleness. There's divine grace, which you can't make happen. That's the trouble with mystical experiences. They happen to you. You don't make them happen. Then there's uh, death. That'll wake you up right quick. Mystical experiences. That's right. And there's also psychedelics, and that's a hard word for me to say in some places, but the story is true, based in science studies in New York University and places like John Hopkins University. There is a transcendence study from John Hopkins that studied non-mystical experienced clergy from a variety of religious traditions, and they were brought to a point of the end of duality in a clinical prepared setting, having gone through a year or two of psychological exams and preparation, massive dose, end of duality, singular self, singular oneness. And so there are ethnogenic ways of doing this. I am no expert, but this is a long tradition of human shamanism. And, I tell you this because this is the science is showing this is true.
Right. I published two books since we have a publishing arm that were using psychedelic cannabis, and they actually people go to sitter schools so they can, like
Mm.
shaman, be there and direct and support. And what this is what I'm hoping to get to is you expressing this, if you will. The self-talk and the conditioning or programming, whatever words you want to use, that we all got or gave ourselves from 0 to 7 is what these ayahuasca ceremonies and psychedelic, all of them are trying to release early childhood trauma. When you have a near-death experience or you have a spiritually transformative experience, you it kind of it I don't think it erases all of it, but it gets rid of a lot of it.
Oh, it does. I'm switching over to a screen for a second here. I'm gonna look something up I read this morning that if
Okay.
I can find it, I wanna read it to you. It's from an ancient text. Here it is. It's from the Gospel of Thomas,
Okay.
and it's pretty clearly written. It's his disciples said to him, "When will you be revealed to us, and when shall we see you?" He says, "When you strip yourself and are not ashamed, you will not be afraid." And in another place, there's another guy who I don't know if I can find this one. Um, no, maybe. So one more place. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Just take a sec here. 21. I see if this text. This is an obscure text, I think. Um,
Is it also from the Gospel of Thomas?
no, it's from no, I can't find it. No, it's from another related non. It's not a it's not a gospel or an Acts or any of the non-canonical books. It's another writing from another person, and
Okay.
I can't lay my fingers on it. But my point was going to be was that even outside of the Christian tradition, the stripping of self um, is the attitude of salvation. So that, and this is what Jesus was trying to teach us and was misunderstood. There's this. Um, well, I'm going to stop there because I don't remember what your question was or what you were saying.
No, I was just talking about that this time period. It appears that people
Right,
are working on
right.
releasing their traumas, and whether it's the 20-year-olds to 40-year-olds that are doing
Yeah.
ayahuasca or other um, plant medicine is what everybody calls it, or people have spiritually transformative experiences, or they have near death experiences. It's all really to release that trauma to get back to the love that you are, because most of the people that go through the tunnel of light and get their experience, they're the ones who are judging their acts, not a judge and jury, right?
Yes, and the quote was it's this ancient quote, and I wish I could give it to you directly. But when you die, you take off your coat of sufferings in hell, and you become naked in front of the divine. And that's why I wanted to find it. It was like, oh, this fits right in. It fits right in. But I couldn't lay my fingers on it. So in those plant medicine experiences where one has enough and a guide, someone to help you through because there's some dark places you have to walk. Um, well, you can have that experience. You can have an end of self experience. You can take off the trauma. The trauma falls away. When I died and I went through hell, all of my trauma was stripped from me. I came back with, when I came back in my body again, I still had trauma from the night I died, and I had that for a very long time. So, but I found that if I lean into the oneness, if I lean into the unity, then when I'm in the now, the trauma goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
and I'm not always living in that space. Okay, I like everybody else, I live here in this world. So as frequently as I can get into this place of balance, this place of quietude, of silence, I can stop my uh, trauma from impeding or impinging on my thinking. And in the in I had an intense experience. I can only speak from my experience. When I was in high school, I took a triple dose of purple microdot mescaline, which is San Pedro cactus, which is peyote, and I had this transcendent experience of the presence of the oneness speaking through everything made of material, including all of me and all my cells. Like each little cell had one little tiny voice. And that was true of all the nature and existence around me. And it all said, I am. And it kept saying, I am, I am, I am. And I saw in this experience another um, self that was much, much bigger than me. And so the result of that, and I want to talk about the after effect of it, which kind of in mystical experience, it's the after effects, it's the change that happens. I dove into meditation as a result, and to find this source of oneness. And I found that by using what I learned in my psychedelic experience, the plant medicine experience, by applying another tool to my experience, I was able to not just remember it, but to live inside a portion of it and
Yep.
therefore cultivate it. And so I think one of the things that happens with true mystical experiences is that it leaves you with a definite remembering of this transcendent state that is a tool for us to use. Like you were talking about, you always remember this thing that happens to you. Me too.
That's
It's like always
that's yeah. Well, that's where you and I have had wonderful conversations about mysticism and how part of this big change from the um, old paradigm to the Aquarian age is going to happen because more people be will either remember their mystical experiences or start to have mystical experiences so that they will not need a go between anymore, which will sort of mess up a religion and some of the other structures that are in existence. Do you want to? That's why you have not church.
That's why I have. Oh, look at this! I brought a prop. Um,
Uh, well, I can put your website up too if I could. Good, not church. Okay. Well,
yeah. So mysticism abhors organization. My greatest fear for the whole thing that's going on with the NDE is, and we've talked about this before, Kathy, is there's all these people. Science is raising the dead. Science is the major driver, I think, in mysticism in the world today, in spirituality, because there's so many people coming back from the death. And so that they're in our innate radiance that comes back with us, this little thing that every mystical person who has an experience has to some degree. There's some light there. So we're kind of our individual heavens, the little inside ourselves, heaven present here, are, we're connecting to each other on the ethereal plane across. You can experience in a transference of energy. um, but so my big fear about all of this is that someone's going to try to start a religion, and I don't. I think that a codification of it, in some sense, might be helpful, but it's so individualistic. Every mystic in the history of the world, because you're different people, your experience of the divine has this differentiation, except for in one place, and that is at the core of your being, and that's where this unity is experienced. And so cataclysm's coming. I somehow in my feed, my news feed, I get the asteroid alert. So like I get every asteroid that's, and the headline is always asteroid near Earth, but it's 1.2 million, or whatever distance it is away, and sometimes they come between the moon and the Earth. How close is that? I don't really know. I have no measurement for that. But cataclysm is something that's chaos. It's It looks from here like it's going to increase. It looks like there's going to be eventually in the next century dislocation, famine, floods. Yesterday in the freaking news, they're talking about, oh, what are the 3 major East Coast cities that are going to have real trouble when the tide rises? Like, oh, New York, Washington, and Miami. It's like,
I know, but I wonder about all of that stuff. Again, the media, and I'm sorry you were in the media, but I'm sure you weren't like this. But the media, the media is set up to churn a bunch of fear. And the reason why I
oh, it
wanted to have
does.
you on is that I want people to realize that we don't die; we are eternal. We are creating our own whole hologram of our reality, and together we can create a different hologram of reality without a preacher, sorry, no offense, without a priest. well I mean, all I'm saying is, I'm on the pulpit here.
No intermediary. Without an intermediary.
Well, the thing is that we all are sparks of the divine that wanted the experience to expand consciousness. So wanted us in differentiation to have different worldviews, so that art and music and dance and all of these expressions could come through and go back into the database, the whatever you want to call it.
The
And so
cloud.
the cloud. Well, whatever you want to
Like
call
heaven, heaven's this cloud. Everybody's running a cloud.
it. Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
part of my training with organizations and the study of organizational systems, because I ran this this nonprofit, and is that cultural change comes through cataclysm. Just in the same way that mystical that enlightenment comes after great suffering, awakening comes after suffering, the cracking open. That's true for individuals, but it's true for corporations, nonprofits,
Yes.
churches, and nations, and maybe planets as well. And so with a breaking open comes the opportunity, given all of the spiritual energy that is existing on Earth now. So even with all this cataclysm, you can bet that they're going to continue, science is going to continue to advance and raise the dead. And there's always going to be a new supply of near-death experiencers to supplement the already existing, gazillion number of people who've had other kinds of mystical experiences, which far outnumber the NDEers. But the big change is the cultural, is the speaking of it, is the claiming of this thing in your regular life, and so that to own this, if you're a store clerk or a subway driver or a doctor, or to not lose your competence as a human being, because you see a transcendental state of being inside yourself and others. And by one of my great hopes is that this near-death experience movement will become loud enough to allow everybody to talk about it from their own points of view. Hinduism, or the roots of Hinduism, Hindu culture, or Persian culture, whatever culture there is, wherein we all know that the language of the divine is metaphorical, symbolic, and simile, and myth, so that everybody understands from this very root place in language that no one's particular story is ever the full truth, because it can't be.
Right.
But what can be is this lived experience of the presence inside yourself, especially in community, where we can grow it together. And I have great hope for Earth. Actually, I see trouble coming, because I'm a realist. These things are coming, but I'm also, because I guess we're coming towards the end, I guess, maybe, I'm not sure what time. How much time do we have?
We got 20 minutes if
Oh,
you
we got
want.
plenty of time. Oh, that
Yeah,
big red clock that I'm looking at. That
yeah. Don't
sorry.
worry. Don't worry.
Um,
No, I'm not cutting you off unless I have to. I love talking to you. I can't tell you how much I've learned from you and how much I benefit from your way of using um, um, it's not just allegory. I think what you do is you touch that part in my heart that not that many people can when they're expressing because you're in your heart. There's lots of people that are professorial, research like that talk about things and like the quantum physics stuff. They're talking about oneness too, but it doesn't have the like I can't wait to tell you. I can't wait to share love energy. There's a generosity of, and I would say that would be a lot of the near death experiencers that I've interviewed. They come back with superpowers. They have no fear to go out there and try a bunch of things, and they are generous beyond measure. It's almost like they got the memo when they were out of their bodies, like, okay, you go back and do something. Right?
well, yeah, more than a memo feels like a contract to me. Like you know, not to do this or else, but you've signed this thing. You have no choice. You're bound by this. And
Right.
yeah, that's a good word, generosity. I've experienced that with every end ear. I guess I'm trying. Let me think here. Um, yeah, I every single end ear with whom I've had a deep conversation, that is always true.
That's right. And that's why we'll be talking towards the end of this about the IONS conference. They actually have experiencer lounges, and they
Mm.
have even online a lot of the events where we past 2 years we were on online. We have experiencer lounges, and Sean Lether in Hawaii does an experiencer lounge. I think once a week or fairly frequently. And what happens is that people just need to talk. I mean, at the live events, people will hold, you'll see somebody, your eyes will match, you'll feel their heart, and they'll just hold your arm and can't wait to tell you their story because they're processing. They're trying to find the words. They're trying to,
Mhm.
and they're not crazy. That's the other part is you think because you're so out of this reality, you think that you are the misfit rather than the construct isn't loving.
Right. Exactly. And that being the misfit is one of the problems of the whole NDE experience. I identified with all of the toys on the island of misfit toys. Someone's going to end up doing a paper on that someday and find this, the psychology and emotional state is that those book. Maybe they have already done that, what they represent. But yeah, being a misfit.
Chiz, probably.
But when you're
Yeah.
with the IANS conferences, everybody's a misfit, so everybody fits in.
Well, the reason I love it, honestly, and we'll show that. Well, I want to show your site first, but the reason why I love it is I got there and it felt like home. I met more people in Philadelphia. Well, in Boulder, we had it in Colorado, and then I went to Philadelphia, and the group of people I was with, the resonance of that heart energy that felt like um, the accepting, loving expression of what I experienced, as close as I can have it here.
Yeah,
in,
I had the same experience.
yeah, yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
So, but
well, and
people,
plus I grow from it too. I feel like I expand when I'm in the presence of a lot of it.
yes, yes. So tell us again. Is it okay if I show your site
Oh,
real
sure,
quick, and
please
then
do. Yeah,
you
please
can
do.
tell why I call you so generous? That I mean, you're amazing. Here we go. And you can tell me when to, well, we'll scroll down a little bit. There we go.
Oh,
So here's your beautiful site. And there's your mugshot and your letter. And you have Not Church, Mystic Tea Room, and Centering Prayer Kriya meditation practice that you offer, right?
yes, those three things.
Okay.
And counseling and consultation and private session.
And you're making a movie, which will hopefully you'll tell me a little bit more about. But could you explain what Not Church is, Mystic Tea, Zoom, and Centering Prayer is, so for
Well,
everybody?
sure. They're a balance between they're a balance between mystical approaches in the world. Not Church is because that's where my scholarly expertise lies, and I've spent my career working within the paradigm of Christianity from a mystical perspective through the lens of near-death experience. I'm a Christian deconstructionist, according to the scholars. I break apart the existing theology or mistheology, and I demythologize, and then I bring the whole thing through the lens of mysticism and unpack the light-filled enlightenment of the teachings of Jesus, who is not at all what they've been teaching. These days, I'm working in the Gospel of Thomas, and I'm up to 21 and 37. They're a match. They balance each other out. So I'm trying to strip away the mindset of the misunderstanding of the divinity of Jesus. They deified him, and there was this political deal that was made between Constantine and the Pope. And then, at the council, they deified him and they made him separate from the rest of us, when actually that's not at all what he was teaching. And it's all through the literature. It's everywhere. Anyway, so I'm trying to reorient Christianity back to what everything we've been talking about today.
Right. Perfect. And when is Not Church?
It's Sunday mornings, and I try to be. It's Sunday mornings live on my Zoom channel under my name, Peter Panagore, at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time these days. Eastern Daylight Time. It's always Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Sunday morning, live. I do a live show.
Yeah.
And I do a live show because I like the community, because that's really Not Church is. So the community of Not Church is an intentional reaching on my part to see if I can find other kinds of mystics like yourself, Kathy, not just near-death experiencers, but mystical experiencers who are in pursuit of the divine. And so we're a collection of ex-Christians and not ex-Christians, because they never were Christians. Following every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Zoom is our crowdsourced mystical conversation, where humility, compassion, and kindness are the rules. But I say it's crowdsourced because I started this group, this salon, out of Not Church, because I was actively seeking people who had mystical experiences, NDEers and not NDEers, but people who've gone deep into the divine, where wisdom, humility, and compassion become an operation of their person, because it's in their soul. And so we have this an hour and a half conversation with people from all over the world. There's a professor I met at an IANS conference. He's from Japan. He's been coming every week, and he's writing courses around this, because the conversation it's just powerful.
Wow.
And so
I need to go to that.
it's really, we're always astounded. I let everybody talk. It's not about me talking. It's about people helping each other in community, mystical community, and it's a safe place to talk about your mystical experience. And it's a place to learn knowledge, head knowledge, but also heart knowledge. There's poetry read, there is songs sometimes. So and then I teach 3 meditation groups weekly, and those 2 of them, Monday and Wednesday, are live on YouTube on my channel, Peter Panagore. The Tuesday one is live Zoom. So and I'll explain the difference between the two. I teach a combined practice of centering prayer, which comes out of Theravada Buddhism and also Christian mystical tradition. I could tell you all the details. And Kriya Yoga, which comes out of Patanjali. and Paramahansa Yogananda. Patanjali is the Yoga Sutras, 3,000-year-old book. And I have combined these in my own interior practice. Mondays and Wednesdays, I lean more towards the centering prayer practice. On Tuesdays, a little more towards the Kriya practice. And I always bring in a global mystic. Could be everything from Peace Pilgrim, who's an American.
Oh, yeah.
Talked about her to Rumi or Hafez or Lao Tzu. Or I find mystical sayings, and then I help us understand what that means, why that's still relevant from cross-cultural to and how it's helpful to us.
Right.
And so I teach what the teachers taught.
Perfect. Perfect. And here, if I want to make sure people know to go to your site, peterpanagore.love, and you'll see each one of these words are live links. So you can actually just click on it and get straight to his books or his counseling services. And then if you scroll down his YouTube channel, where a lot of great material is, you'll see if Peter is your guide after you listen to some of these. And then he has announcements. So this gifting that I'm talking about is quite amazing. The amount of opportunities people have to uplift themselves that you're offering. And do you want to talk a little bit about the counseling services real quick?
Sure. I was a pastoral counselor when I was a church minister for a lot of time and did some training in that. But my focus these days it's primarily mystics and near-death experiencers, people who've had mystical experiences that they can't talk to anybody else about, not even their therapist, or their lover or whoever.
Right. Right.
I help people integrate their experience. I help people pursue their path. I'm not interested in all the teaching that I do. I'm not interested in trying to tell anyone to do anything or even believe me. My goal here is to try to help people find the path inside them that I know is there. And so part of my counseling service is to be able to, that's why I don't call myself a spiritual director. There's a term in religion called the spiritual director, and that sounds too directive to me. I'm much more like a reflector. I help you reflect in order to help you find the path and the meaning, maybe help you find the meaning of what happened to you and how to integrate that and live in life.
Perfect.
And I'm available a few days a week for that.
Perfect. Okay. So now I wanted to show the IONS website after we get a segue a little bit to explain. So Peter and I both are volunteers, or Peter's been a speaker, and this year he's the MC.
I am the MC.
I can't wait. This is going to be so great. And this year's event is going to be not virtual. Well, I guess you can join virtually for parts of it, but it's like the old-fashioned IONS meetings besides this interruption in Salt Lake City. So live. So you can actually talk to people. I can go hug you. It's going to be amazing. It may not be quite as big as the biggest ones we've done because people are just getting used to getting back into it, but I'll bet the energy will be off the charts.
Yep. I'm expecting that myself.
Okay.
I'll see you there.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to hug you. Well,
get a hug back.
So don't tell your wife. Okay, so she's used to it at this point. Okay, so what we're talking about with IONS, it's the International Association for Near-Death Studies. They've been in existence for 40 years plus, and it was started originally by Dr. Raymond Moody. So there are researchers and experiencers. You've got both sides of it. And a lot of times the researchers give insights to the experiencers so that they can use and benefit from their experience, correct?
Correct. I learned a lot.
You did. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. So how long have you been involved with them as I'm bringing this up?
Maybe starting in 2016. I think I started in 2016, maybe
Uh-huh.
2015. I don't really
Uh-huh.
remember exactly. But I find the thing I like about IANS is that, if you haven't guessed already, I really like science. And one of the things I'm hoping happens in the 21st century is that science shows that what we're all saying is true, and then and is verifiably has verifiable evidence, and then the rationalists and the fearful can read this and understand that we're not crazy, and that this is real. And then that will help change the minds of enough people as we nudge the world toward a new civilization.
Right. Well, you know what? I don't know who is crazy. If the people that are following all the news and all of that timeline versus us. I mean, it's all in divine order in my view. And what this does is this reinforces people explaining that you really don't die, that your essence, your capability to experience just goes on and on and on. So that's one thing. It also allows you to see all the different superpowers. And I'm serious. I think most of the near death experiencers have come back with remarkable superpowers. And a lot of them have multiple degrees. You've done 2 books, you're working on a movie. I mean, look at what you're doing. There's no fear in any of it. I mean, that's the difference between near death experiencers and the general public. Not that many people will put themselves out there, will do that much to make a difference. And that's part of it. But so you get to be the MC. Is that, have you ever been an MC before? I know you've been on TV and everything.
I've been on TV, and I've been in front of crowds a lot because I was a pastor.
Uh-huh.
And I've spoken in front of, I ran town meetings during, not town meetings, but I would election debates. I'd be the guy to stand up there and during election debates. So I've done some of that kind of stuff, but I've never been an MC before like this. And so I'm working to prepare myself. I've been on stage a lot, so it's a natural. It is a sort of a natural fit for me. But
Yeah.
I definitely want to do my best. I'm preparing and working hard on that to make sure that I,
Yeah.
as much as I can, have an order. And I'm expecting to have fun, and help. I guess my real goal as an MC is not just to introduce people, which is important, and to make announcements, but to see if I can help be a tone setter for the gathering of the beings of human light. Not that they need, not that near-death experiencers need tone setting, but I want to encourage that.
Right.
I want to help encourage the magnification of that among us. That's my subtext.
Perfect. Perfect. That's the way I look at your gift, is that you know how to create community, and it's egoless the way you're doing it. You're hoping for a positive outcome for everyone you touch. So the thing I wanted to say about being an announcer, I think the hardest thing about doing this job is not butchering people's last names.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
not to set that seed for you, but it's like, oh, should I pronounce it in Italian or in English, or what do I do with all those consonants? And
Yeah,
so
that's part of the whole prep for sure. And I'm dyslexic, and so I have a hard time pronouncing words in the first place. So I'm like that, which makes me like I'm gonna write them. I'm gonna write all the names phonetically, and I'm gonna check ahead of time how to say them, and I'm
oh,
gonna keep the phonetic spelling on my text so that I can just read the sound.
That's so perfect. That's so perfect.
Yep.
Because I mean, somebody will even tell me before we come on how to say their name, and then I'll come on and it's like, whoops, it's out of there. And I do the best. And I'm just human. I'm doing the best I can. I enjoy learning from you so.
Canterbury Tales, Chaucer, A Canterbury Tales, the allegory.
It took an hour.
It did, but there it was.
How perfect. How beautiful.
It's
Oh,
really funny.
so great. Well, thank you so much for this. And thank you for all that you do and who you are and all the gifts that you're. I feel like you're a candle lighting other candles in the dark. And
I'm being lit by another candle myself.
yeah, but you're sharing. You're not
Oh
just
yeah, well that's part of the mandate. That's what happens with the NDEers, I think. At least the ones I know.
that they got go forth and talk.
Yeah, well, to end on a Bible quote, or I won't quote it because I can't do that very well. But you're supposed to stand on a rooftop and shout.
Mm.
And this is what I think that. Well, I think this is what he meant. I don't think Jesus was talking about the church or theology or doctrine or dogma or any of that stuff.
No, because that wasn't his intention. That was what they created, and what brilliant! All of this whole storyline is brilliantly constructed for us to get out of the cage. It's brilliantly constructed. So, and get back to in here. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you for who you are. And I can't wait to see you in person. And again, how's the best way to reach you?
PeterPanagore.love. PeterPanagore.love. My email is there, peter@peterpanagore.love.
Perfect. Well, thank you. And we'll talk again soon. You know we will.
I know we will. I'll see you at the end of the month or the end of next month.
My gosh. Yeah, this whole year's
It's gonna be
going so
great.
fast.
It's gonna
Yeah,
be great.
it is. Thank you.
Peace and love.
Yeah.